With me today is Bettina Schürer, and she's a homeopath based in Europe, and she's got some very interesting things to talk to us today about the coronavirus and what's going on. So not so much the issues around treating the coronavirus, but the political issues that are arising from it, how our societies are being managed. And I know Bettina has some things to talk to us about in terms of the opportunities that actually spring out of this to go forward into creating real peace, so real understanding of peaceful communities within Europe and within the world. So Bettina, I wonder if you could introduce yourself and talk about what you're noticing with the COVID virus, and then talk about the politicians and the political situation as you're seeing it.
Okay. Thank you very much for the invitation that I can talk to here to everybody who listens to us. Yeah, I am a homeopath for animals, and as such, homeopaths always follow the string to find the reason, what is behind something. And certainly I notice what is going on here in Germany and a little bit what is going on in the world. And so I did my thinking in the way a homeopath thinks, trying to find the reasons of this whole thing. From the medical side of it, I do believe that COVID-19 is dangerous for certain people when they are weakened in their energetical system, maybe because of chronic illnesses, which then would be again a very good reason to go and find help by a homeopath. And or when they are caught now in fear of existence, or in fear of having to die one day. I think these days let us face strongly the fact we all have to die one day, which we try to ignore so much. Yeah. And that itself is a shame, because I think it's very good to know that we have to die one day. And I heard from a person once many years ago that try to think your life from the point of death. And when you follow this thought, this makes a great change. And if you are a Christian person or another believer in any God, then it makes it even stronger, because then you will be judged either by Jesus, God, or maybe if Jesus is in us, as he said, giving us his bread and blood, then we will have to judge our life after death ourselves. And that's the view of death which I find is a very big help for life. And so, yes, but that a little bit apart on. So that's the point from the point of view looking at it as the illness which COVID-19 brings. And what I followed up then strongly, what is this for a strange reaction we find in the politicians who seemed in their little bit unlogical way of acting to be helpless at the beginning. And then I got the feeling they do follow a string which leads to a very, very strong political force, and that they take any chance to make this political force every day a little bit bigger. And that is what personally frightens me. I feel very strong in my energetic system, and so I'm not really feared of COVID-19, but it does make me sad and disappointed to see what is happening to our civilizations, to our political systems. And there again, as a homeopath, why do they act like this? We in Germany now spoken, we had 1945, World War II over, a tremendous big chance to bring peace, at least to Western Europe, and then slowly further on also to Eastern Europe. And when you follow up a bit, I would say the politicians did use this chance to get our civilizations into peace, which we could hold very many years now, luckily. But now it shows that the roots of what happened before 1945 are not eliminated.
Yeah.
There's many people who were involved in the time before 1945. They followed up as judges, as politicians, in parties. They were reintegrated. And the societies, everybody who has connections to grandparents and grand-grandparents knows it, silence. First years, silence. Maybe about 68, and then slowly one said, we have to look at this time. But that was a very hard process, which I think never was gone through to the end. And gone through to the end, I would understand, apart to homeopathy, I have for many years to do also with systemic looking at things. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think that would be the greatest chance to eliminate what happened, and the chance to break the line from offender to victim, which goes on and on. Offender, victim, that goes on and on. And it's a systemic work, you have a chance to break this line. That, I think, would be the perfect way to handle it, but of course that is not accessible for a lot of people. But I think there is also, if you get into the emotions of doing it, then also things happen. Like now, we have this pandemic, and what happens? People run into the stores and get out all the toilet paper. They get out the flour. They get until they got pictures in the stores which they remember from times in war. And I believe the society hangs now in this time, and maybe it's a way also to be able to heal these times.
Yeah. So what you're talking about there, Bettina, is that there's a psychic memory which goes back through the parents and the grandparents. And like my father was a soldier fighting in this war that you're talking about. So that memory is deeply inside of myself, like it is for people in Germany, same thing. And now you're saying that the situation with the pandemic is similar enough to the war situation that there's an opportunity to heal what was going on during the war. So this is the opportunity. Yeah.
I hope. I hope that it breaks out on the emotional ebene, on the emotional level, a little bit up what is in the epigenetic memory, and it can solve out. And yeah, that is, I think, a question which concerns the whole society. And then when we look back at the politicians now who grab so strongly for this political force, then I think it's also another side of it, that they have been also translated out of the times of war, the way children were brought up. Very long, and it stayed the same. When it's worse when children not have been at home, but in the kindergarten, a lot of children, where they were ruled as if we were still in Hitler's time. And I think also in the families, it took a lot of time until it was forbidden to beat the children. So extreme form. And it took very long until the abuse of women was forbidden from husbands, and it was only almost 2095 or something like that. And so I see there also a strong background of people who, if I say it extreme, who learned love by hate and force and cruelty. They can switch. From the systemic work, I know it. I have been standing for a woman who has been abused over years from her family, from men out of her family. And then she had children. And in this time, she came to work with us systemically. And I stood for her. And I could feel how, when she, what we would call love, but in her, the memory was not love, but the memory was violence. And it was very hard for her to turn that, to control that. It was a very big problem.
Sure.
And,
yeah, no, I was just going to say that, you know, these cases that you're talking about of, say, domestic violence, you know, which is a tremendous problem here in this country as well. You know, it's not just in Europe that we have this problem. And you're absolutely right that people who are in the process of being a victim, they become bullies themselves. And all of this, you know, a notion of being cared for will always have violence and these things tied up in it. What I'm hearing you saying, Bettina, is that whilst it's covered up, the same thing is happening with our politicians and with our structures of our society. So you're drawing this is a conclusion, a systemic conclusion, is that this runs throughout society.
Yeah. From we homeopaths, we say also COVID-19 and these people where it breaks out, as soon as this is healed, and homeopaths can heal it very quickly, comes the chronic disease in light. And so I think it's also, I call this sick, what is happening with these politicians who are doing it, and quite sick societies we got. And so COVID-19 brings that now up.
So what's the way forward? What's the way forward? How can we change this?
Oh, if I knew that, I believe, I mean, my way is, I see that I stay as and live as independent as I can, and I can live quite independent here on my farm with my nice people and animals around. I live a good life. And part of that, I have a strong will to bring out my thoughts. And the first step, what I am looking for with all the people I get in contact, when I say something which provokes them, when they go contra, I catch it and I try to talk and listen and talk and listen until we can communicate again. Mm. What got lost is the communications. The politicians, they don't communicate anymore. Mr. Spahn, he can now decide on his own. He doesn't need to ask his other members, and the communication is gone. And what I see a little bit in my possibilities to find ways that people communicate again and not only say, you're wrong, I am right, you are terrible, I will kill you. And to bring, yeah. And if we are strong enough and enough people following a way to try to help out of these crises, I do have a tremendous hope. And I do look at nature and see how nature is just about to recover in a time which is incredible. Animals take over, the dolphins take over, and horses take over villages, and the strength in nature I feel at the moment extremely strong. And that gives me also a lot of hope. And then it's another point, yeah, this COVID has so many faces. And another point I look at is that Mother Nature, our Earth, our universe, did get quite at her end and needed to bring up a shuttle on the world. And I do believe in a high intelligence behind the virus, behind everything. And I do hope that we are led strongly by this intelligence. And yeah.
So yeah, like it's extremely interesting, you know, your position, what you're talking about here. And, you know, that notion of, you know, as above, so below. And what you're actually seeing going on is that it's all the way down through the society. And the alternative is to begin to communicate. And, you know, in my own work, I observe this within an individual. So in my, you know, clinical work, I will watch a person lose contact with the parts of themselves. So one part will drop contact with another part of themselves. Mm-hmm. And to begin with, you have to just have contact. Then they have to connect to each other. Mm-hmm. Then they have to begin to communicate. And then a long, long way down the track, they can cooperate and collaborate, and they can become coherent. But it's many steps in that line. And, you know, what you're talking about here is in between people that you have to be able to maintain that communication, and then peace can possibly come from it. So you're talking about with people that you're talking to, but the same story goes up and up and up and up in the society until we meet the chancellor. So you know, we have to take it all the way up, you know, to her. So yeah.
And I think it's now not the time to be silent and always meditate. Very important, nothing against. But I feel it's also a time to come out a bit of yourself, those who feel like doing it. And I feel now very strongly like doing it. Yeah.
How do you advise people, Bettina? So you feel strongly that you want to share what you understand. So like your position is important to share. You meet somebody who has a different position, and you already know what their position is, maybe, or how do you encourage the communication when you meet somebody who has a different opinion? How do you encourage it?
Well, my hobby is language. When I got something which makes me think very strong, I always have to write poems. That helps me sort of, and so I am very much conscious of the force of language. And if I feel attacked in my opinion, I try to choose the very best language I can and to get out of this rotten language we got today. And already by changing the way you talk or the way you write, the other one begins to think a little bit more. And then I just try to keep the dialogue going, and certainly not answer in the rotten language I am approached.
Okay. Do you have any other tips for helping people with communication?
To listen. I think that's also got forgotten very, very strongly, that a part of communication is to listen to the other and not only to talk.
Mm.
I think, yeah, I do believe in these things very strong. And if one tries to accept the other one as he is at the moment in himself, and has a respect for it, and also knows there's always a story behind, and everything has its reason, then it gets easier and easier. And to listen to the other, that's a very important point.
Okay. So when somebody is in a position where they just will not listen to another person, and they are certain about themselves being correct, what is the way forward? What is the way forward for them? And what's sitting behind it? Is it always that they have been the victim of some bullying, or, you know, I'm just thinking of ordinary people here now.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do have a case which is very close to me, family of my wife, and there I had to choose the method to let them run out, not to react at all. Say, you don't split me, and I do everything against that the family gets split, and your idea of splitting. That is also something I've been observing for a long time now, that it is tried from the politicians and the medias and whomever to split. It started here with a great homeopathy bashing for years going on, with lies, and all medias, they lied. And they got a lot of people fanatic against homeopathy. But at the same time, the amount of people who were going towards homeopathy increased. Mm-hmm. The bashing did not make the homeopathy go down, and so it didn't work. But it split very strongly, and it split also in families. Then you have the big theme of vaccinations, where you also got these splits where people can't talk with each other again. And that's another point which I follow to try to show where we get splitted. The people start to realize what's going on, and that is all on purpose, the splitting us. And yeah, it's stone for stone.
Oh my God, yeah, divide and conquer, as they say. You can conquer if you can divide the people. So
yeah, exactly. That has been followed up very strong.
Yeah.
Divide and conquer. Yeah.
So in our society, most normal people, want to have a successful life, and they want to have a successful family. They want their children to have good opportunities. They don't want to be experiencing trauma and problems. And yet, without the communication that you're talking about, there's little possibility that can be done. Or can you see an alternative? Is there stepping stones? Are there stepping stones?
An alternative. Well, maybe it's also helpful. The astrologues, they say, the situation of the planets are changing, and we are now going in a different century from the planetary system. Maybe it's also helpful to spread this knowledge from the spiritual side, that we are in a time of change. Nobody can run out of it. Nobody will achieve to say, I keep what I have and that's all I want. And I think also with what's going on with nature, people do realize that we cannot go on. And yeah, I hope one day it has reached enough people that something then really can change.
Okay.
And what do you see? What do you see as other possibility?
Well, you know, there is no change without change, as they say. That, you know, that, and it's going to be, you know, a bit traumatic for people. And change always requires that something gets broken down and something new gets put into its place. So if you're attached to what was there before, then there will be some pain associated with it. The answer for me is to actually be able to paint for other people a brighter future.
Yeah.
So this is what an alternative would look like.
Yeah.
And then the discomfort or the pain of the change can turn into discomfort, can turn into, well, why were we really holding on to it anyway? So it can go down by steps. This is my feeling about it. The other thing is that it may not be that everybody is going to want to make change. So we can be in the time of Aquarius, you know, this time of change that you're mentioning, the astrologers. But, you know, will everybody want to do that? Will a politician who is, you know, what you're talking about is that they've come from a traumatic background of some sort or other, will they want to jump out of that? You know, given that they're so attached to their power, so attached to being in that system. Possibly not.
No, I think this will be the answer, yeah, for not so little, or to go under in any way. That is a part of the change. And the word attachment is certainly very, very important. The more you are attached, the less you can change. And the less also you see. I mean, I have heard you talking that the virus told you it's now time that we jump out of dualism. And I mean, that's the biggest answer you can give. If we manage again, as it was probably once in paradise, to get out of dualism and stop thinking we all got in our heads, which the apple promised in paradise, that we get the knowledge. And if we realize that there is much more knowledge than what we can imagine to have in our head, it's the knowledge we can receive. That would be paradise. And
yeah. Well, there's no question in my mind that when you're locked in a duality of any sort, there is no creative possibility. And, you know, for years I worked with people and they would say, oh, we're like out on the side, and then, oh, we're out on the side. And they say to me, help me to come into the middle so that I can be balanced. And I would always say to them, forget it. You have to jump out of this duality altogether. You can no longer stay in it. And it's very, very challenging for people because the attachments to the struggle, the attachments to the stresses is just too high. It's just too high. So how do we educate people? How do we, or is it our business to do it? Is it our business to expect that people are going to want to change?
Well, I think it's important that some people are there who are prepared to take the chance to change, and that they'll be strong enough to go through what will come. I also think it will get worse until maybe the end of the year. Not now, from now on, better. And we have to stand up for it, and we have to stand up through it. Also, these ugly things you just mentioned, the families who want to hold and touch, and the families and and there's so much blaming. I hear people 30 years old, they blame now the 70 and all the people. You ruined the lives of our children with what you've done, or now you ruin the future of the children because we have to protect you all people, which is crazy. And I think every voice who is there to hold up to these things is worth a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Out of good old Switzerland, I heard that.
Yeah.
These
What is happening, say, for example, in a community like homeopaths, you have an active community and so on. The type of change that we're talking about, does it begin inside of a group of people with a like mind? Is that how it begins? So, like for you, would it be that you begin within your professional group to encourage this knowledge of change, or is it wider? How do people listening, how do they make a start? How do they make a start to try and make a change?
Well, I do think to contact the homeopaths should help to strengthen every single person, whether healthy or not healthy. And I think that is a very good advice in these days. And as I am a homeopath for animals, I am not in direct contact a lot with homeopaths for people. But I do know that there has always been great homeopaths who try to find remedies for the society. They talked about putting it into the water system, that every morning gets it. And we have this special way of homeopathy, the miasm, which is treating chronic illnesses and which is treating genetical transported illnesses, psychic or on all levels. And in this way of treatment, in this miasmatic way of treatment, I believe there are remedies which would help the whole society. But I don't know whether there are good enough homeopaths who will say, we do pour it now into the water. I'm not enough in contact, but I know that they are very strong now on the way to say, hey, look at us, we have possibilities to help the people who are ill. And I hope that the day will come where homeopathy will be accepted also in Germany. In Switzerland this is accepted, but Germany and around here not at all. And not allowed to treat a COVID-19 patient.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you're anything alternative here in Australia, you're not allowed to treat them either. That's totally banned. And yeah, it's interesting. And you know, the kind of views, like the psychological stresses that people are enduring at the moment. I know that the homeopathic approach would be brilliant to actually, help people with all of that.
Because I think it is a strong thing which is on an energetical basis. And homeopathy only has to deal with the energetical basis. And if I take out of my person everything together, which is materialistic, then it's maybe that big. Huh? The rest of me is energetic. And you think of an atom, and if you blow up an atom to the size of a football, the neurons turning around this atom, there are about 40 kilometers out there. So the space between is energetic. That's why I say, if I gather my body in a materialistic form, all that is materialistic about me is this size. And so if they would say, yes, homeopathy is an alternative way to treat, they would have to admit that the essence of being is energetic and not materialistic. And with saying that, they would have to put a lot of their wisdom elsewhere. And that's a hard way.
Sure. If you were to meet with the Chancellor tomorrow, what would your guidance be? What would your advice? You know, you imagine that you were sitting on the train next to her,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got a long journey, and she's nothing else to do. What would your advice be to her?
What I would advise, I would first try to make her think about herself. I get maybe, I mean, you surprised me now with this question, but I could imagine I would try to get her with her heart, and I would try to find out that she talks to me about her friends. Or maybe create situations. Angela Merkel, if this and this would happen to you, which friend would you go to talk with? I think that's what I would try to follow up. That she would have the chance to realize who her friends are and who are not her friends. But so, to me, she is soul. She's a soul person.
So try and actually talk to her about the need for a community, in fact, which is the interesting thing, you know. Yeah. To be the Chancellor and to, you know, be so isolated as she is, you know, it's a tragic story.
Did you get in touch with her on your ways already?
No. That's a story for another day, that particular energetic approach. Yeah. Okay, so I'm still interested in, you know, these observations around these epigenetic, you know, memories coming out of the war and how they're playing out at the moment. And I like my dad, as I say, he was in my father was in the war, and every day at dinner time there would be stories about the war every day as I was growing up. And so this is a very big cultural thing, all of that problem. And to be able to actually break out of this pattern, because I agree with you, the pattern is reasserting itself. It's the same fear tactics. It's the same, we need a powerful leader. It's the same, we will follow rules. And, you know, the restrictions will become more and more and more. You know, beyond a person communicating, is there a strategy? Is there another strategy that we could employ?
Well, maybe we should also start to show different ways our societies could function. Like when you take a firm who makes cars, that one could say, now we have had it from top to bottom, and now we could try to put the responsibility and the work equal on all the shoulders who are working for building these cars. Starting to show the system could be changed.
Okay.
And we would still build cars, and we would still sell cars, and we would still gain profits. Maybe not quite such a nice example with the cars, but it's so important in Germany. That's why I picked it, probably, and to show different ways. And
but you're absolutely right. This is something practical that anybody could do, like in their small company. It doesn't matter how big or how small the company is. You could decide to actually devolve responsibility. You know,
also then in communities, that we do not always have the boss, but we could have people who want to involve in the politics of the community, come together, talk until they agree on a decision.
Okay, well, look, that's a nice place for us to close our conversation. Is, you know, I would urge that everybody follows Bettina advice and
no, they only have to want to talk to me. They don't have to follow advice.
Okay, so I think it would be a good idea if people got into a conversation with Bettina and maybe she could share It's hard though, isn't it? Here is the example. How do we change the language? How do we convert all of this?
Yeah, by doing it. By doing it. And sometimes I also name it. I name and say, look how rotten our language has become, and I try to change it.
Okay. Thank you, Bettina. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, same to me.
Speaking. Yeah.
Thank you as well.
Okay.
Okay. Take good care.
I will. I will.
Okay.